Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Get your questions in. We're going to get to all those here in a little bit. We got a ton to talk about. But before we even do that, guys, I need to also thank Duck Camp for sponsoring throughout the Texas College Football Playoff run. That's right. Jerry's got his hat. I got the shirt on. Forgot it's reversed. I look like an idiot pointing to the wrong side of my shirt. But want to give a big shout out to them. And guys, the Final Four is now set. So let's take a look at it. You got Ohio State and Texas, and then Notre Dame versus Penn State.
Two overwhelming thoughts for me. One of these coaches is going to win their first national championship. I mean, that's what happened when Kirby got knocked out yesterday. One of these coaches will be a first-time national champion. So congrats to that guy ahead of time. Two, hey, could there be a better matchup for Blue Bloods, Bobby? I mean, is it possible? Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. I mean, potentially if USC replaced a Big Ten team. But, I mean, this is about as good as it gets for Final Four for college football playoff in terms of Blue Bloods.
I think this may be the top four in 1970.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go way back, look, they are the Blue Bloods. There's no doubt about it. Historical teams with rabid alumni and fan bases. This is an ESPN dream. You have to say that because it is heavily populated and it's going to be well watched. And the only question I have now is what they're going to do. Have they announced, Jerry or Blake, what they're going to do about the Orange Bowl and whether they're going to have that on Thursday or Saturday of next week? Because that was something they were looking at because they had to move the Sugar Bowl back a day. I did get word that they were not going to move the Cotton Bowl. So Texas will be playing on Friday, it sounds like, for sure, 100% for sure, because there was some discussion. Greg Sankey had put that out there that they were going to look at some different avenues there potentially. But as of right now, this is the way it looks like. Notre Dame, I thought yesterday, Jerry, played a good game. Kept the ball away from Georgia. Didn't do much. But I just tell you, Georgia's receivers, I mean, there's a ball that hit Dylan Bell in the mitts, man. Downfield, 50 yards downfield. Couldn't come up.
Gunnar Stockton played pretty well in that game, actually, for a first-time starter. Kirby's got to get control of his program. He had to kick his two best receivers off before the year. Came back to – I mean, Notre Dame had 244 yards. They had under 200 yards for the majority of that game. I mean, yeah, the kickoff return was the backbreaker in that game. There were the two plays at the end of the half when Georgia tried to get points where it was 3-3, and the left tackle who had to be replaced, Monroe Freeling, who's going to be a good player, they had to bring Ernest Green back in, even though he wasn't 100% healthy, because Freeling gave up a couple of sacks. The second one was a strip sack from behind. Notre Dame scored on that. Then they came out and returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Those 14 points, those two plays, in about, a 45-second period of time were the difference in the game. And there's a lot of officiating questions out there in the college football playoff. That's the one thing. These things are going to get magnified even more because there's more eyeballs on them. Teams have complaints both ways coming out of that game. By the way, yes, Longhorn Frenzy. That's the other thing I missed. There were three things I was thinking. If you can bring up that super chat, Blake. Only SEC team remaining.
And it's pissing off a whole lot of other fan bases. It's glorious. Yeah, how does it feel for Texas to be the lone representative in the SEC in the Final Four of college football's playoff? I agree with that. The one thing I'll say about Notre Dame, Jerry, they were able to possess the ball against Georgia better than Texas, in my opinion, because of the QB run game. The QB run game is I just think it's a big piece of how you beat a Kirby Smart and or a Nick Saban defense that has superior talent. I think that is the way you possess the ball against them and at least can slow their offense down a little bit. I mean, I I go back to the SEC championship. I think Texas could have won that game clearly, right? If Texas had been able to run the football a little bit in some way, maybe QB run game, maybe whatever. Obviously, that's not the team Texas has now. But that in and of itself could be something that we look at going forward as Arch Manning likely takes the helm next year.
Yeah.
Blake, you're muted,
Yeah,
buddy.
I just realized that as I started talking there. Sorry about that, guys. We're going to talk some more about that Texas-Ohio State matchup. But first, Z from the T with the super chat says, any update on the portal?
Yes, absolutely. So Texas has Marvin Jones Jr. That's been reported and out there coming in today. He visited Oklahoma yesterday. He is a defensive end that originally signed with Georgia, then went to Florida State where his dad played, and then now is in the transfer portal yet again. He had 4 sacks a year ago. He is on campus, and without saying more than that, we do more than this, and there's a reason here. We do expect other visitors on campus this weekend. But until those things transpire, we're not going to mention them publicly. But Texas does expect more, to our knowledge, does expect more than just one visitor this weekend. Jerry?
And, on Marvin Jones, I covered him a little bit out of high school. Was a 5-star prospect. Obviously, Bobby mentioned his dad, Marvin Jones, was a star player at FSU. Went to Georgia, was more of a hold the point of attack guy off the edge, setting the edge versus a pass rusher for them. Went to FSU last year. I think he wanted to be released to be more of a pass rusher. So we'll see if Texas makes a real move here. Bobby, I mean, similar position to Trey Moore. So what would that mean on some level in terms of Trey Moore too? So we'll have to see. I mean, he could play where Barron Sorrell does. Don't get me wrong, but we'll see. We'll see what Texas ultimately does there.
And Toby says, why are we bringing Marvin Jones in? We have an edge room so stacked. We have multi-sack players that can't get on the field. Why bring him in?
Because this could be a situation where Texas wants depth in the room still, with not just depth in the room, but also experience in the room. That would be a big piece of it. Also, Texas is losing Barron Sorrell, and I think there's a likelihood Trey Moore may be looking at the pros.
He's having good games at the end of the season.
Yes, he is. And so those two things combined, you're losing 2 guys that have played a lot of football. So they may be looking for another player that's played a lot of football. And I want to say this. What's this Texas team right now without these transfers? I mean, Matthew Golden, 2 touchdowns, right? Or excuse me, a touchdown, extra point conversion. Silas Bolden, a punt return for a touchdown. And Andrew Makuba, the game-sealing interception.
Yeah,
all 3 of those guys came in through the portal last year, 1 year. Okay,
Trey Moore, 2 sacks.
Trey Moore, big game. Bill Norton, Jermaine Lole played key roles. We are seeing the importance of getting not. And I will say this: I don't even know. Andrew Makuba was fairly highly ranked in the portal. Silas Bolden and Matthew Golden weren't highly ranked portal players. Jermaine Lole and Bill Norton weren't highly ranked portal players, but they were good, experienced players at high-level schools. And in my opinion, that's Sark. Sark knows what he's doing. He's looking for guys that have experience at the major college level that he knows can be fit within his system. So I would watch for those types of players at Texas. They have not at this point, Jerry, gone on a player. Now I think they could actually, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I think we could talk a little bit more about some smaller school players that may play up eventually, but we'll see if those guys go in the portal after their bowl games, et cetera.
All right, before we get into the Ohio State talk, first, Bobby, I'm going to let everyone know how they can escape the insurance trap.
Yeah, absolutely. All season long, you've heard us talk about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. Renewal time rolls around. You scramble for quotes and end up stuck with a higher price. BKCW breaks that cycle. They equip you with a wide variety of tools like safety training programs and a dedicated risk consultant to save you time, make your employees safer, and show insurance carriers that your business is a good fit. Because let's face it, when it comes to premiums, most factors are out of your control. BKCW focuses on what you can control, and that's your risk profile. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started and get the support you deserve. 512-250-5055. They offer safety training programs for your business and more. Again, that's 512-250-5055.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. And all right, guys, let's look at Ohio State. First, we're going to start with the spread. The game opened at 5.5. Not a lot of movement there. It's currently sitting at 6, with Ohio State being the 6-point favorite, and the over and under at 53.5. What's y'all's initial thoughts on that?
Expecting a higher scoring game. That's the one thing. The number 1 and 3 ranked defenses in the country, and they're expecting a higher scoring game. So that because Texas has fallen from number 2 ranked defense to 3 after the last 2 weeks, giving up 900 and something yards, as you should, in far as total defense goes, yards given up. But pretty high scoring game, Bobby, being expected for the number 1 and 3 defense on the field at the same time. That's one of my initial reactions. But a lot of speed's going to be on this field, a lot of playmaking.
A lot. And you mentioned Ohio State and their defense. They were suffocating against Oregon. I went back and watched that game yesterday afternoon in full. They were absolutely suffocating on Dylan Gabriel. I looked at I started doing a little deeper dive on the Ohio State defense, Jerry. They are a veteran group.
Yes.
They have 8 seniors or grad transfers of their starting 11. So 8 seniors or grad
only sophomore is Caleb Downs. Everybody else is
sophomores, Caleb Downs, and then they have 2 juniors. They are extraordinarily experienced. 4 of those guys had draftable grades. 4 of those seniors had draftable grades last year and opted to return to Ohio State this year.
Both of the edges.
Yep. And so you look at that, they've got guys.
They have the most sacks remaining, too, 47, most sacks of any team.
They will be the most talented team, talented defense Texas plays from front to back.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say this because I thought Georgia had some issues in the secondary. I don't think Ohio State has issues in the secondary. Okay. I thought that the only other defense that was probably good front to back like this was maybe Michigan. But Michigan had issues at linebacker, in my opinion, and Texas exposed them in the outside passing game. I don't think Ohio State has those issues. They are a complete defense. They've got a good defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles, former Oklahoma State defensive coordinator. They like to play 3 high, but they can also go man free because they have the personnel.
Yeah.
So they can mix it up quite a bit. It will be a tall task for Texas. And I wrote this morning on TexasFootball.com how I think Sark needs to play this is, he has to get the ball out and get it to playmakers and see what they can do. Because this is not a game plan where you can turtle and just try to run it up the middle and continue trying to run the wide zone, because the from a complementary perspective, the Ohio State offense is just too explosive. Now, Will Howard may turn the ball over for you. They may hit some snags in the road themselves because Chip Kelly and Ryan Day have been known to do that. They overthink things at times. Not unlike Steve Sarkisian can at times, right? It's very similar because they both got that pro mindset. But I think that Texas has to come out slinging it against Ohio State and find success early, because the Buckeyes are not They're a really good defense, and unless you can get them on their heels early, they can just pound it on you, and they can throw play action over the top. And they got a freak of a receiver, guys. I mean, he is
Julio Jones-ish. Somebody asked me, Julio Jones-ish for me.
I think he's a more natural receiver than Julio Jones. Like Julio Jones didn't have. I watched Julio Jones and scout him in high school, Jerry. Julio Jones wasn't this. He was as talented. Julio Jones was as talented, or if not more talented, right? But Jeremiah Smith is a receiver right now. Julio Jones had to go to college to learn to be a receiver.
Yeah, a difference in times. These kids play. Exactly. They grew up training it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he is a true freshman that came in ready day one. And so I'm not. I think he may be the best receiver in college football. So I think he's tremendous. Ohio State, good football team right now. Good football team. The question is whether or not their quarterback spits the bit. I'm just going to be honest.
Highest rated QBR left in the playoffs. It'll be interesting. Does he do it on Friday?
Well, my question.
He's definitely at his best year, but he also has the best parts around him. The other thing, Chip Kelly moves the pocket a lot with him. He doesn't keep him stationary. He keeps him on the move. So he doesn't let Will Howard be a stationary player. He keeps him on the move. The other thing for me is, look, Sark's gonna have to got to get the ball out quick, get it to your guys, see if they make plays in the pass game. I don't think this is necessarily the game you want your quarterback turning his back to the defense. And then flipping back and seeing where everything's at through play action. I'm not sure that's this game, but you never know how a game plays out.
Hey, you know what else? Yeah, I saw that no Klubnik or Levitt sweep. Guess what? All three quarterbacks have now had that Texas has faced in the playoffs. Mobility.
Yeah.
Now, South KMXS, is Will Howard faster than Sam Levitt?
No,
he's not. But the more important part isn't how fast Levitt was or is, it's how slippery he is. Will Howard has some mobility. He ain't Sam Levitt.
No.
In that regard.
No.
He's not going to Houdini some people.
No, that's why I think they keep him on the move too. Because they don't want him sitting in the pocket for a multitude of reasons. He's not look, Sam Levitt's more athletic than Cade Klubnik. No offense to Cade Klubnik. Sam Levitt moved around through pressure about as well as you'll see. Houdini-like, just keeping plays alive. I mean, he really kept this team in the game, even though they're down 17-3, just keeping plays alive, making throws on the run, going right. He wasn't making huge scoring plays, but without that mobility, Arizona State would not have been in that game after.
Oh, he was a sitting duck.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, Colin Simmons alone would have had 3 sacks.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Jeremiah Smith for a second, guys. William Niche here says, I remind myself Jeremiah Smith is flesh and blood human. But how do you cover him? Do you bracket him with the safety?
I think that's the whole issue. If you do that, then how do you commit to the run, man?
That's where Ohio State.
They've got two. They've got 2 running backs that may be the top 2 outside of Jainty, who I think will end up going 1 in the draft. Keyshawn Judkins is a transfer from Ole Miss that is really, really good. He's their more speed back. But Travion Henderson, who is now healthy for the first time in a long time, was the number 1 running back in the country his year coming out, and he is playing like it right now.
Yeah.
Look, Ohio State has some dudes on offense.
Yeah.
They have
him and Penn State
dudes.
Yeah. The other 3 teams remaining in this playoff, you look at Penn State with Singleton, and I think Katron Allen's going to be a really good pro. Katron Allen. Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love got dinged up, and Jadarian Price from Denison, Texas. They have those all 3 of those teams remaining have a good running back combination in terms of playmaker with the feet, and then a guy that can run it with power as well. Those all 3 of those teams have a really good running back combination. Ohio State and Penn State's are Jeremiah Love may be the most talented back left, but Penn State and Ohio State can hit you with 2 different types of guys pretty healthily.
Yeah, if you're ranking running back rooms of the Final 4 teams, Texas is a distant 4th.
Yeah,
and that's I'm not trying to down Trey Wiseman because I love him. He's over
Right.
1,000 yards now. I mean, but those guys,
they're older. They got a bigger combination.
Yep. They're big. That Texas is going to have to find ways to move the football that doesn't. It's not outside zone. It's not inside duo. It's down the field. It's over the middle of the field. This is one of the things that I want to see Texas do more of, hopefully, in this game, Jerry. Texas needs to attack the middle of the field more. In the last 5 minutes of that game against Arizona State, Texas attacked with Gunnar Helm over the middle. They attacked Ryan Wingo over the middle. The Matthew Golden touchdown catch was over the middle. Texas has traditionally, with Sark, kept it outside the hashes a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's to keep away from bouncing ball, tip balls, etc. But if they're going to be successful, I think they got to, against Jim Knowles' defense, I think they got to throw a lot of RPOs and get them trying to figure out whether or not it's a run or a pass.
And if there's one thing that Ohio State's facing, do you stay hot 3 straight games offensively? That's the one thing. I mean, look, if they stay hot all the way through the playoffs, they're national champs. You tip your cap and move on. Say the Michigan game was an anomaly because it's Michigan and they're in their head and all that. Ohio State did miss 2 pretty much chip shot field goals in that game, else they would have won a tight one. But still, can they stay hot 3 games in a row offensively like they have been? That's going to be the key for me. They're going to be good on defense because their defense will travel the way they play it, and they're so experienced and they're so strong up front. Because Tyler Williams, interior guys, getting some first-round mock stuff too. I mean, they got guys. Is the offense going to stay hot? Are they going to keep connecting at the rate they have been in the run game? Are they going to hit the run? Because what they have had to do, everybody's has to deal with adversity. Texas has had to deal with adversity on offense at the skill position. Cedric Baxter getting hurt. Then Isaiah Bond not healthy since Oklahoma. So they've kind of had to, from the beginning of the season, kind of retool when Baxter went down, what they were going to do in the run game, how it fit Wisner and Blue moving forward. Then with Isaiah Bond out, maybe the perimeter passing game's not quite as good, as explosive as it was, as you thought it was going to be. So Texas they've had to respond to adversity there. Ohio State has on the offensive line. They lost the Alabama transfer, Seth McLaughlin, with an ACL late in the season. They've had to retool, reshuffle their offensive line. Donovan Jackson, the former Episcopal 5-star lineman, has gone from guard to tackle. They've had to retool. Their adversity's been on the offensive line, and they seem to have found their mix and match late in the season here. And I think that's really allowed them to kind of take off offensively. So it's gonna be really, really interesting game. I think Ohio State's pretty strong on special teams as well in the punting kicking game.
Got a few other super chats, guys, regarding Ohio State. I'm going to go ahead and get to this first one here from Bradford. He says, we have a right guard problem, but who for Ohio State will be the matchup there? Also, we have to weaponize Hill this game. No more spying in no man's land.
I don't think Texas has a right guard problem, guys. So I disagree with the prerequisite there, or whatever you want to say. I don't think that's the case. I think Texas is actually rotating in Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell on purpose. They're not pulling anybody. Okay, they've been doing this all season long. And Texas has had a good offensive line pretty much all season long, except for maybe 3 games now. Okay, so that their matchup though in there is difficult. Jerry just talked about it. Williams is a possible first-round guy for them. Okay, so it's like, okay, you've got a good guard, but what if Tavondre Sweat's going up against you? All of a sudden your guard isn't very good, or isn't good enough. That's what Ohio State has in there. Can you put the second part of that question back up?
It was about, you're going to have to give me a second. It was about weaponizing Hill. No more spying in no man's land.
Maybe. I think he needs to go forward more in this game or take it back. Because they like to hit. I mean, I'll tell you, they like to hit Travion Henderson out of the backfield now.
Yeah.
He is a good pass catcher and runner after the catch. So We'll see. I don't think Texas has a right guard problem, guys. I really don't.
By the way, those in the chat, yeah, look, that's kind of what we're talking about. Ohio State, who have they struggled against? They were earlier in the season. That's kind of my thing. Can they stay hot offensively 3 games in a row? Look, there's no perfect teams. I've mentioned that. I don't think there's going to be great runs and great teams anymore because of the portal. It affects everybody nowadays. Your depth on some levels, but the key for me with Ohio State and Texas game is. Look, anybody can win the game. Either one of these games, anybody can win these games. Is Ohio State going to have 3 hot games in a row offensively? Because there were times this season where they definitely didn't have it. Was it Will Howard? Was it Chip Kelly putting all his pieces together? Have things just finally clicked for them? We're going to find out. If they play 3 high-level games in a row or 4 high-level offensive games in a row, we'll look back and we'll be saying, man, it just clicked for them late in the season. You know, like a team that makes a run in a basketball tournament, right? I mean, does it just click late in the season and they just get hot and can carry it through 4 games where Will Howard's on the same page with everybody? The offensive line issues are fixed and Travion Henderson's health. Maybe that's the case with Ohio State. We'll see. I think any of these 4 teams can win a national championship. I think either of these teams can win each of their semifinal games. Ohio State seems to have the hot offense right now. We'll see if they can pull it. We'll see if they can carry it over for 3 games. Because Texas, on paper, Texas is a better defensive team than Oregon. Not even close. On paper, it's the best defensive team Ohio State will have to face even if they win. So now Penn State played them a tight game, obviously earlier in the year. But this Ohio State's facing a total different defense than they faced against Oregon. Oregon couldn't stop anybody in the college football playoff. After they lost 41-21. That means Oregon averaged giving up 34.5 points a game to the 3 teams in the college football playoff playing Ohio State twice. I mean, Texas is a lot better than that on defense.
Speaking of Oregon Ducks, Jerry, will you let everyone out there know about Duck Camp?
I sure can. Let me put the hat on. Yep. Duck Camp is made for the people that live in the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, or football to watch in the college football semifinal. This reads not for you, Aggies or Sooners. They like doing all that stuff, so they built a company centered on it, based in Austin, and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. There are those of you out there that look forward to the opening day of hunting season and the college football playoff with the fervor and excitement of a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. And Duck Camp is here to let you know that from opening day to game day, they've got you covered. At Duck Camp, they believe you can't just sit around and wait for the adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of every season. Here's the great continued seasons, you guys. Yes, hunting and the college football playoff if you're a Texas fan. If you're an SEC fan, A&M, Oklahoma fan, you go get your Duck Camp too, baby, because you want to wear it watching Texas beat Ohio State.
Thank you, Jerry. And we got some more Ohio State talk coming down the pipe here, guys. This one from Nick Laney. Thank you. It says 2 things learned in the last 5 years. Number 1, Ohio State can't beat Michigan no matter what. Number 2, Will Howard can't beat Texas. Hook 'em.
Not with 4 tries from the 5-yard line. You know, That's got it. You talk about, a tough loss for a guy. You're a quarterback that leads your team all the way back and go into OT or have 4 tries from the 5-yard line and you can't get it in. That's a tough roll. I want to say this. Part of that had to do with the crowd at DKR that day, by the way, and the loudness of it in the game's final moments. Make sure Jerry World is the same way. Make sure Jerry World is the same way on Saturday. Or excuse me, on Friday. Texas needs to have a home field advantage in this game. Period. Have to.
Yeah. Yes, Will Howard is 0-4 versus Texas. Caleb Downs is 0-1. Seth McLaughlin was 0-1 towards ACL not playing. So, yes, at their other schools, those guys were 0-for against Texas. Just for the stat. By the way, another thing. The offensive lineman Fitzgerald For Ohio State, Gunnar Helm, high school teammates at Cherry Creek. Good friends, high school teammates at Cherry Creek going up against each other this week in a college football semifinal. So that's really cool for those guys. George Fitzpatrick, I believe is his name. People are asking about Marvin Jones visiting today. Marvin Jones expected to visit today. Look, more of a would be more of a rotational player if Texas went that direction. Has 6 career sacks at Georgia. He was more of a hold the point of attack guy. Wasn't one of their top pass rusher guys, hold the edge guy. Wasn't one of their top pass rushers. FSU this past year had 4 sacks. Is he a play the run guy full time in the SEC is the question there for him. Came out a 5-star prospect. Yeah, and Brandon Hugh remembers watching Marvin Jones. His dad at the Bengals his dad was a hell of a player at FSU in the glory days.
Our next super chat comes from Sean. Thank you, Sean. He says, all the teams left have a pass rush. Quarterback, look out.
I looked that up. Ohio State has the most sacks of anybody left in the playoff with 47. Texas is 44. How about that, Texas fans? 2 years ago, you couldn't get one to the ground. Penn State has 39. Notre Dame actually 4th with 33. They have a couple of individual pass rushers. That's my question for Notre Dame against Penn State is, are they going to be able to get the Drew Allar? Because Penn State can run it with those 2 backs. So they're going to have to take a little more risks.
And then KD35, I'm the best, says, do you feel like Sark held back in the Arizona State game and is about to throw a playbook at Ohio State similar to what he did in 2023 versus Bama and this year at Michigan?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that ain't no lie.
Fingers crossed. I don't think he held back with 5 minutes to go in the game, by the way.
That gives me hope.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he did with 5 minutes left to go in the game. They threw the ball over the middle. They threw it outside. They mixed and matched those last 5 minutes and in the 2 overtimes. And Jerry's right. That sort of play calling and whatever you want to tab it is exactly what you hope for. I will say this. It's got to be Sark's going to have to go into his bag even a little bit more because Jim Knowles specializes in the 3-high look, right? He's one of the inventors of it. And Sark kind of understood and got he solved the 3-high look, as Rod Babers likes to say, but he did it after Jim Knowles had left Oklahoma State. He did it in 2023. And Knowles, well, he left Oklahoma State after 2022. So I don't know that Sark has tried Jim Knowles on in that 3-high yet. But yeah, KD 35. I'm with you. That's one of the game inside the game right now for me.
Yeah, I think Texas of the corners, they'll go at oh gosh, I won't pronounce his name right. Igbenson, the Ole Miss transfer. He's a kind of he's similar to Avion Terrell. I'm not saying he's the same. He's a bigger, longer kid, but somewhat of a grabber in coverage as well. Then the other thing is, can you get the Ohio State safeties in some one-on-ones when they're out of 3-high? Caleb Downs, great player. Is he a great one-on-one cover guy? Is he better than he was a year ago? Is that his strength? Is that going to become a strength of his? I don't know. He's a hellacious player. Is he a really good man-to-man guy? Can you get to some of these favorable matchups you see on tape, and how often can you get to them? And when you do, is Ohio State's pass rush not going to be able to get home? That, to me, that's going to be a big key in the passing game. And I do believe this. I think Isaiah Bond, his speed has to be decoyish at times in this game. They need him. They need him getting down the field. Because one of the things I think all year with Texas, when he was healthy, he gave you a perimeter threat in the short passing game, but he gave you a real speed that teams had to be concerned about over the top. And I do think that's hurt the Texas offense. Not that Ryan Wingo's not a fast player, but it's different with guys that run 10-3 when you're preparing for a team. He's just one of the fastest players receivers in college football.
He didn't get deep on ASU. All of his deep routes on Saturday were covered. All right, excuse me, yet on Wednesday. Keep saying Saturday because that's normal.
That's why I'm not sure he's the same guy he was early in the year.
Yeah, I agree. And so I would say counting on Isaiah Bond to be full health, even in 9 days or 7 days now, not where Texas wants to live. Not where Texas wants to live.
And going back to that KD35, I am the best super chat. This one from Eric Mitchell, kind of on the same note here. He says, "Good morning, fellas." We talked about Sark and dialing it up. But he said, Rod has an interesting stat yesterday that we used 0 targets to motion until overtime in the Arizona State game. Do you think that could be by design?
I think in the coach's office they had 52-23 for the game is what I think.
Channeling their inner Jerry Hamilton.
Maybe.
That's what I think personally.
I don't think it was unintentional. I think the complete lack of targets to motion maybe, but we'll see what happens. I mean, look, how Sark goes and constructs this game plan, I think he has to throw it all out there. And I think part of it is putting Quinn Ewers in a position to succeed early and continually, like he did against Michigan. I mean, Sark put Quinn in a position to lead early, and that opened up the running game. Let's roll the dice and put it on Quinn Ewers and his right arm, and whether that's with a long extended, what Rod calls handoffs out of the backfield in the flats, or RPO game, or whatever. Let's see what Quinn can do, because I think that's the formula potentially for a Texas win. Not going to beat Ohio State in a phone booth. You're just not.
But I will also say this to Nate Russ's point about the Arizona State game, and I know we're moving on. Texas had guys running behind the Arizona State secondary in the first half of that game. They just didn't connect. And Wingo's 3 yards behind. Matthew Golden, you got a PI, luckily on one of them. But there were opportunities to make huge plays against ASU. They were there.
Speaking of ASU, we got a couple of supers on it. We're going to start with Girded Loins. His super chat. Bobby says the selective outrage on the calls last game is hilarious. It's clear most of the talking heads didn't watch the game. Appreciate the straightforward coverage, guys. Hook 'em.
You think it's bad now? Wait until Georgia fans, because, Notre Dame, when they ran the 11 on, 11 off, first of all, I heard what Kirby Smart said. Look, SEC said we couldn't do it, right? So that is something of note. And I get where everybody's having fun with Kirby. But the wide receiver clearly should have been called for illegal motion or false start.
Yeah, but that game wasn't close like the Texas.
But Bobby, that was a fourth down play. I mean, that got them a first down versus having to punt the football.
Yeah, but they just ran the clock out afterwards. That game was not. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Jay. It was a bad call. Bad call.
It gives another team a chance. So that what I'm saying is Georgia fans are saying Texas gets all the calls. Not even we get these calls. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, I don't really care about relitigating that game because it was a hell of a game, and both teams reacted. Who's to say Texas wouldn't have gone back, and if Arizona State then goes 3 and out, the very next after that they have to kick a field goal and it gets blocked and returned for a touchdown. Arizona State's field goal kicker was 1 of 2 in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. Texas then went down and doinked a field goal. Texas should have won in regular. I mean, I think that if you look at it in the way I look at it, there are a number of calls that go on throughout the game that go your way or don't go your way to pick one out late. I mean, what about and I want to say this because yesterday I was wrong about something.
I mean, there were 7 minutes to go in that game when that call wasn't made, by the way.
But they were up by 2 scores. They were up by 2.
Arizona State go by 16 with 5 minutes to go.
They were up by 2 scores. Let me say this. The one thing I have a problem with after learning this yesterday, Jerry and Blake, I always thought that given the new push rule that you could push people into the end zone or push people forward, that would be that pulling people forward would also be legal. I mean, the Arizona State lineman pulled Cam Scatterbo into a touchdown 100%, 2 yards.
All right, no doubt.
Right? It's like a suplex move, right? Where's the outrage over that? Because that is illegal. And that should have been a 5-yard penalty. And all of a sudden, it's first and goal or whatever in goal from the 7 instead of on the 2-yard line. Texas did really well against Arizona State when it wasn't from the 1 or 2 yard line. Okay.
Hey, Blake, if you can find the stats, there's a tweet, I don't have it in front of me, about the teams kind of remaining in the playoff and who's been called for the most penalties. People would be surprised at that. And I totally agree. I totally agree. Look, it's the whole Duke getting the charges thing in the Coach K era, right? Oh, they get every call. I mean, not really. I mean, not really. That's not really the way this goes. But the teams that are considered the Yankees and the Dodgers and the LA Lakers are the teams that are that the majority of the country is going to want to see lose. That's just reality.
This may be what you're talking about here. Bear with me just a second. Dang it. Sorry, I know this doesn't make for great live. Is this the one?
Yes. Yep.
This is supposedly good teams get all the calls, which we've proven to be false, and actually the opposite. Refs screw good teams. To 2024 opponent penalties against the ranks, Texas 103. Ohio State is dead last at 134. Penn State at 130. They listed Georgia at 99 and Indiana at 111.
Yeah, so there you go. There you go. If the people think those teams just get all the calls, that doesn't prove out that way. And by the way, the other one that's going around and around is the blocked extra point or the blocked field goal that bounced through the goalpost. Ball hit the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody took an AI model rule and put it up on social media, and the thing blew up. Ball hit the ground.
Yeah.
In the end zone, by the way.
Yeah.
Once the ball hits on a punt, once the ball hits the ground in the end zone or a field goal, when the ball hits the ground in the end zone, it is dead. It can't.
Hey, Bobby, I got to get you on this. It is true that Brett Yormark is yapping and whining now. That is true.
Let them all whine and yap. I mean, that's look. Do it from your home because that's where you're gonna be, bud. You're not going to be in the college football semifinals at AT&T Stadium. Texas will be. So, I mean, look, I appreciate if I were an Arizona State fan, would I have been pissed that wasn't called targeting? Absolutely. Okay. I was absolutely pissed that Bert Armour didn't make a chip shot field goal. There are things that happen in a game. There was the pull. I don't know if you saw this, but a pull of Matthew Golden's jersey in the end zone. They didn't call that pass interference. Texas ended up having to kick a field goal there. So anyways, this is it. This is what Yormark said. I have had multiple discussions seeking clarity surrounding the targeting call on Arizona State's final drive of the fourth quarter with Richard Clark. Moving forward, we need to address CFP officiating to ensure national standards are developed. These standards will be crucial to the CFP's future, and I look forward to discussing them with my fellow committee members when we meet next. Whatever, dude. I'm just not a fan. False bravado, false everything about him. He doesn't care about the future of college football.
No.
I mean, he's a wrestling guy.
Talk
about WWE and the sanctity of that sport. The purity of it. I mean, give me a break, dude.
Some more super chats here. This one still about the Arizona State game. MP Houston says something maybe not being discussed enough. The Arizona State win truly shows our mental toughness and culture. Any doubt most other teams would have folded.
I'm on board with this statement. And that's what Sark said the very first time he went to the mic was the resiliency. I mean, to go down after being up all game, to go down in overtime and then face a 4th and 13 and then come back and win that football game. It's just look, This team has a little something special to them. So that's why when people start counting Texas out against Ohio State, oh, they got this great offense. Oh, their defense is littered with seniors. No, that's BS. Texas is going to play a good football game. Now, will Texas win? I don't know. Anybody telling you one team's going to win or lose is full of it, and that's what I'm saying. Texas showed resiliency and fight, and they've done it all year. Could they get overwhelmed by Ohio State from Ohio State's offense? Perhaps. Could they get overwhelmed by Ohio State's defense? Perhaps. Could Texas overwhelm them some in what they do? Yes.
Look,
because I will say this. Ohio State has not faced an offense like Texas is other than Oregon. And one time they gave up 34, and the other time 21. So I don't think Ohio State's faced an offense as good as Texas is either. Not overall.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you get to this level, and when you get to the Final Four, any of these teams can win these games. I mean, look, It wouldn't surprise anybody if Notre Dame and Texas played for the national title. It wouldn't surprise anybody if Ohio State and Penn State played for the national title. It wouldn't surprise anybody if we just moved those around and they played for the national championship. I mean, it's, look, sometimes does Jeremiah Smith prove to be Carmelo Anthony in these playoffs? We're going to find out. To where he just say he's just the best player, dude. And you know what? Nobody could stop the guy, and he was worth 2.5 touchdowns a game. And that was we'll find out, right? But any of these teams can win at this point. The big favorite time, those games are over. This is coming down to really 4 teams and who plays the best on that day and who can put 2 of them together. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. And I know there's games within the games matchups that'll favor Ohio State versus Texas and Texas versus Ohio State in some areas. But this really does, sadly to say, I mean, it's fun, but sadly to say, this stuff comes down to execution. I mean, not sadly to say sometimes from a fan standpoint, because we want to sit here and talk about how great some of these guys are, and they are, but it comes down to execution. One thing Texas did not do well against Arizona State is execute what they wanted to do. If they don't execute at a higher level against Ohio State, yes, they will lose the game. It really does come down to execution. When talent becomes neutralized or close to neutralized, I think Todd McShay said, draft eligible guys, they expect to come out 25 to 27 guys on the field. In the cotton for the cotton
between the 2 teams.
Between the 2 teams, 25 to 27. It's going to come down to which that group executes the best. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's what this all comes down to in games like this.
Well, bring that back up if you don't mind, that super chat, because
I was about to read it, guys. Josh Marquette says, to bounce off an earlier comment, it takes a special group to start overwhelming momentum. Granted, we allow them to get momentum, but still.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. That resiliency and resolve is not easy. I've played it, and we've all done it, and we feel like it's a snowball rolling downhill on us, like an avalanche coming. All we can do is just grin and bear it, right, and try to stay alive. That's what usually happens. That's what usually happens when you face 4th and 13. I think what did ESPN have, like an 85% or 90% chance Arizona State was going to win the game at that time?
Yes.
I mean, you were down to 4th and 13. And
in a way, that game was like Rocky IV, except Rocky didn't knock out Ivan Drago. Ivan actually ended up winning the fight. But Cam Scatterbo was Rocky, man, and he was throwing it. He throwing it.
Hey, that might be his superhero. And that might be him. He's
he took a bunch of punches the first 5-6 rounds, and then he came out swinging. And in the movie Rocky knocked out Drago and had the big upset. I thought he was going to get killed. Ivan Drago won this one at the end.
He was throwing up on the sidelines. He was Rocky a little bit. Yeah.
Jerry's Jack Link says, I don't know the solution for the third quarter problems, but Colin Simmons was posting to Instagram at halftime. That was kind of surprising. Maybe it was the schedule.
At least he wasn't doing what Chris Boyd did back in the day against TCU.
Good.
Chris Boyd said he was going to transfer.
Yeah. Maybe it was the scheduled post, Jerry Jack Links. Maybe he scheduled it ahead of time. We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Biggins, Minnesota. I assume Minnesota. Second half points from Texas versus Arizona State, 7 versus Clemson, 10 versus Georgia, 10. A&M, 0. Kentucky, 7. Arkansas, 10. Vandy, 6. That has to change for us to be in this game. Hook 'em.
Absolutely. Completely agree. That's what I'm saying. It has to be. Texas has to put this game in Quinn Ewers' hands. It can't be a tentative game plan, but it can't be a deep ball game plan either. Because I'm telling you, Quinn and the receivers aren't on that page. It's going to have to be the 15 and 20-yard comebacks, balls over the middle. That's where Texas has to be with this. Because if they start going deep and they set themselves up into third and long or second and long, that is not good. That's not smart. That's not smart football from Sark. They need to move and possess the football against Ohio State. It can't be, go deep, and let's throw it up. There has to be a rhythm and preciseness to this offense, in my opinion, against Ohio State. None of this giving up a free play by throwing it deep just to keep people honest. It's not going to work against Ohio State.
They have to establish some sort of run game in this game as well.
Even if it's the outside pass that is essentially a run, right?
Yeah. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's a pretty athletic kid in the pocket. He was running for his life in that game. He looked like Sam Levitt.
I do think Texas has a better offensive line than Oregon.
Yeah, they do.
Especially in run and pass protection, by the way. I like Texas in pass protection.
We're going to come back to Ohio State, but we got a lot of recruiting / portal questions. So I want to get to those real quick from way earlier. We're going to start here with Juan Garza. Thank you for yours as always, Juan. He says, what's going on with defensive line portal recruiting? Did they not like the Iowa State defensive lineman? Is it risky to wait in the spring window?
They liked him, but again, liking guys and it all working out from value, what somebody thinks their value may be versus what other colleges are, in contention think the value is. That's where all this kind of gets the moving parts of all this. But they are not look, I know it worries the fans right now, but Sark's just not – it's the same approach as he takes in high school recruiting. I mean, there's not a rush to fill out this portal class. I mean, I don't know what else to say. They're looking for the guys they absolutely think are going to make them a better team and they want. Not question it, but they do need, Bobby, depth on the defensive line.
They absolutely have to. And not just 2 more. I think they may need 3 more. I mean, look, I think Texas has to go heavy at defensive tackle. Now, Kobe Onyedim is the young man you're talking about that went to A&M out of Iowa State. He announced his commitment either yesterday or this morning. I can't remember which, Jerry. Okay. But long story short, with that situation, Texas liked him, but Texas couldn't sit there and bring him in for an official visit on January 1st.
Yeah.
I mean, they were playing a football game. And, maybe he wanted more, or you just don't know right now with some of this stuff, in my opinion. And so I think we have to wait and see what transpires. I think that this week will actually be somewhat important for Texas, because I think that they're not just hosting Marvin Jones this weekend. We'll see exactly who all comes in, and we'll see what that all means. But look, Texas is still in the market right now at DL recruiting.
And some of the other portal spots people are asking about. Alex Scully, thank you for yours, says, appreciate you guys. Is Trey Williams from Clemson a take by chance?
The guy that's a talented kid that's battled a lot of injuries. So, the thing with these guys is, are they transferring to be that have been a rotational depth piece? Are they transferring to do the same thing? It's kind of like what we talked about with the running back. Like Justice Haynes, for instance. Well, there was questions about Justice Haynes. Shard Choice. Look, they did kick the tires on a couple of guys, but Choice obviously in Atlanta said we're good at running back. But the question is, Does somebody who's been a rotational guy, and Justice Haynes has been a one of two backs, is he going to go into a similar scenario, or is he going to go somewhere Michigan where he thinks he's the guy? Do these guys want to go from rotational player to rotational player? That's not what many guys get in the portal for initially. So we have to see where the interest is for a guy who's been injured a lot, who's a good, talented player coming out of high school, Trey Williams, but it's just suffered through some injury years.
And then another name that has been mentioned quite a bit, including in a couple of super chats. We're going to start with this one here from Brian Alfaro. Thank you, Brian. He says, would Texas have any interest in Texas A&M wide receiver Noah Thomas? And then I'm also going to add in this one, guys, from Derek Smith. And we'll come back to the first part of his in a second. But he also asked, are we looking at wide receiver Noah Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, Texas is looking at Noah Thomas, Georgia, Miami. Again, it's a lot of this comes down to who values who, Bobby. Who values who more in some of these instances. So we shall see where his value is amongst those three teams.
The thing that he gives you is red zone mismatch at receiver with size. And Jerry, Texas did take size at receiver last year. Sark clearly wanted to get more size. Thomas is 6'6", and he fits that role of experience that Sark likes at a high level. So I see what Sark wants in him maybe, and Texas is, at least right now, in line for a visit. Is this a must-get recruit for Texas? I don't think so. Okay. Is Georgia going to, after you saw what they did at receiver last night, do you think they maybe think he's a must-get receiver? They could see him differently. I'd also add that Texas has some good young talent on the roster. I don't know that any of them, though, are as good of blockers as Noah Thomas or have the size mismatch that he does. So I'm interested to see where this goes with him. But Texas is interested. Are they over the moon? We'll see what happens.
And one of the things too, he's an X. He's a pure X outside guy. If Texas made a strong move there, that means Sark sees Ryan Wingo as a movable piece his sophomore year, his second year. That's a key factor in all this as well.
Shelly wants to know, and thank you, Shelly, for the super chat. How is it from the player side when being recruited? Is it relentless? Does it sometimes get overwhelming, even though it's a compliment?
So early on, I would say this for a high school prospect, early on, the guys that get recruited early, starting mid-freshman year, a lot of these guys we're going to be talking about. Hey, while we do this, do you have Amari Latimer's?
I do indeed.
While I talk about this, I want to play Amari Latimer, the 2026 running back, top 100 level kid in the country from Tyrone, Georgia, west of Atlanta, Sandy Creek High. Tashard Choice has been on him a while. People been in the chat. I thought about this. Hey, we need a bigger back. We need a power back, a downhill back. This is your guy in 2026 that Tashard Choice is off after. Javian Osborne is that more of that, and I don't compare him as a player. The Ashton Janty, the guy who's got a little more explosiveness, can bounce it outside. This is a power downhill guy that's 6 foot, 5'11", 210 right now that will be 220, 225. So I wanted to show his video while we talk about this. But as far as high school recruiting, look, your first into your freshman year through your sophomore year, it's fun, right? It's going on the visits. It's getting smooched up a lot when you go on these visits, and everybody, it's telling you how great you are. It's fun. You pick up all the offers. You get get on Instagram and Twitter, and you announce your offers, and it's all fun. It's a great experience for these guys covering it for years. Nowadays, though, when these guys get to June, they start to feel the pressure of recruiting, the official visits, telling people no, really telling people that they're truly considering no, the NIL engagement and all those negotiations. The parents that's close to home come into play at the end, or the parents just going to let their kid go far away from home. Kids start to feel the pressure leading up to those decisions for their senior year. It used to be February. Now it's before their senior year. If you talk to kids, They all feel a different pressure. The fun year and a half part turns to pressure when you get about the month and a half from decision time. And then what'll be interesting now, Bobby, now when you sign your NIL papers and your scholarship grant and aids or whatever it is, technically, recruiting's supposed to end, but I think we all know that's not going to be the case. So then that final pressure those guys feel before they get to signing day on December 5th, if there's even that anymore, or guys may be able to sign whatever they want in the future, but right before they enroll, before, that December period, right before they graduate from high school, when teams make a last push on them, no matter if they're committed or not, to try to keep them home or try to get them to flip. Those are the times where I found in recent years, kids really feel the pressure. It's so much fun leading up to those pressure points, though.
Look, the kids starting off love the attention. By the end of it, they understand what it is and they're done with it.
Yeah.
Now, some of them will continue to gather attention through social media where they can control it, but they don't necessarily want to talk to outside media as much afterwards. And that's normal. I mean, it's a normal process, in my opinion. This running back here, Jerry, that we're watching is a load.
Yes.
He's absolutely a load, has great speed for being as big as he is.
Got some Catron Allen.
I will say this. I will say this. I like Javian Osborne a little bit more in a phone booth.
Right. No doubt.
Top of your feet.
No, this is your inside zone, SEC, downhill, give you a downhill run game. Similar, maybe Catron Allen. I'm not sure he's quick to the edge as Catron Allen is, but there's some similarities there. This would be we'll see. My update there is I talked to him early in the week, and I think Texas Deshard's made him a priority for a while. I think Texas is in a pretty good spot right now. He has two uncles that played at Miami. Look, those are Atlanta area kids too, man. Those kids are fast. He's not playing against zero competition here. These are fast football players in Georgia at the higher levels. But I think Texas is in a pretty good spot. Tennessee, Miami were mentioned in Michigan, but I'm not sure where Michigan's really at. We'll see if Georgia tries to make a push here as this thing gets closer to the spring, a serious push. But I think Texas is in a pretty good spot. I expect him to be on campus later in the year. I'm not saying Texas is going to get him, but I will say this: he fits a need, Bobby, for Texas at running back.
Yeah, he does. I was actually going to compare him a little bit to Cedric Baxter.
Yeah,
he's that big back.
Yep.
Has a nice hands out of the backfield here too.
No doubt.
All right, well, let's move on to some more super chats here. And actually, we'll go back to that one that we started on, if I can find it, from Derek. And he said that run to the punter was a legal hit because the punter was outside the tackle box.
Yeah, I saw something from like that too. Yes, but, he was barely outside the tackle box, first of all. And it didn't look like he started actually off of the tackle because they lined up in a snap position that literally was not perpendicular behind the center. And so they lined up right. The snap was right. And so the refs are going to have a hard time calling that. I think the bigger issue is you just don't run into the punter, period. But yeah, I mean, talking about that to Derek's point is that was the wrong call, essentially, yet it went Arizona State's direction. So yet another time where, people yelling about calls. I mean, there are plenty that go both ways. The biggest issue I had in that game was not targeting or the punt or even the carry into the end zone. It was the complete and utter lack of holding calls.
Yeah,
that was systematic.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Individual calls, you can always say, oh, that's a judgment call. That's this. Okay. It was systematic not to have a single holding call all game, period. So, I mean, those are the things that I look for.
By the way, I want to answer something from the chat. Bobby Petronic, I like James Simon too. I think his senior tape is tremendous. I think James Simon's going to be a really good player at Texas. The other thing I wanted to say around that just off of this comment, but not the Texas ASU game related. every time you think you've seen it all, and maybe I've seen this years ago and just don't remember it. Bobby, I don't think you saw the beginning of the Notre Dame Georgia game. Bryant Young's kid roughed the punter. Well, they call it running into 2 plays in a row on the first series. He ran into him, which probably should have been a 15-yarder. They called it 5. Repunt, same thing. I mean, I Freeman was like, "Hey, man, dude, you did this 2 plays in a row." I mean, and they were lucky the first one wasn't a 15-yarder. For the chat, I don't know if y'all saw that, but I'm not sure I've seen the same player back-to-back plays rough the punter 2 plays in a row. And neither one resulted in the first down because Georgia got sacked, so it ended up being a 4th and maybe 6, and they still had the punt.
Speaking of punts, Kyle wants to know, did you get a chance to rewatch the fake punt and look for what I was talking about yesterday?
Yeah, I saw one guy downfield 4 yards. So yes, he was an illegal man downfield. The second guy was actually the edge guy. And so, yeah, it was one guy was 4 yards downfield. That was an issue. But again, am I sitting here yelling about that? No. That's the way those games. There was a lineman 4 yards downfield that had actually gone into the end zone on the extra point. That was 4 yards downfield, then came back to 3 yards. That's illegal as well. That's illegal lineman downfield. Of course, they just called Texas for a hold on defense and not the lineman downfield on that 2-point conversion. So, I mean, look, we could go through minutia on this. What's happening right now is the national media needs a narrative, and that's what y'all are being fed, and everybody's trying to talk about it, and it's just BS. Texas won the football game. Texas improbably won the football game, by the way, after going down in overtime with a 4th and 13. That's all we really need to talk about, in my opinion.
T Outlaw, how do linebackers from OSU compare to Georgia's linebackers? Sorry, late to the chat. We have not talked about that. I would say this. Their starters every bit as good as Georgia's guys. I mean, Simon, really good player. The 5-star. Sonny Styles, tremendous long-rangey athlete. We had him as a 5-star when I was doing national rankings. That was a laydown. That one was easy. Do they have as many of those guys as Georgia has? That play for them? Probably not. Georgia's linebackers really are the strength of that team this year. But their frontline guys Simon's really good. Their frontline guys are really good. Sonny Styles, really good. The high draft picks.
On a related note, Seth with Super Chat says, Georgia played their best against Texas, but was regular against other teams. Will this be the best personnel that Ohio State has played?
Oh, sorry. I was reading the chat. Georgia
Will
played their
the best personnel that Ohio State has played. Yes, it will be. Maybe.
Penn State's close, but Texas.
I want to say this. So, skill position talent on offense. I think Oregon is definitely the par of Texas.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. They've got a nice tight end. They've got good receivers. Penn State has good personnel, a terrific tight end, a burgeoning, really top draft pick quarterback, I think, eventually, and 2 good NFL running backs. Is it the best personnel? I don't think so. I think Texas, Penn State, Oregon, give or take here or there, has great personnel. I mean, those 3 teams are those 2 teams that Ohio State have played. Oregon and Penn State have great personnel. I think Michigan had great personnel on defense. And the fact that Michigan had great personnel on defense and Texas scored 31, that's one of the things that does give me hope against the Wolverines. That's one of the things that does give me hope for Texas against Ohio State. So I don't know that it's overall the best personnel. It'll be one of 3. I mean, you're talking about three teams that are in the final 8 of college football too.
All right, Bobby, if you don't mind, will you let us know about the good folks at Flat Creek?
I will. Hey, I know it's early morning, so it's a little early for wine, but you may have a big date tonight. You want to check out and get Flat Creek Estate. It is the Super Texan is their wine of choice right now. It's being sold in specs and across the state of Texas. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin. And they've won award after award for their vintage wine, the Super Texan. Of course, Flat Creek is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. It's perfect for a day date with your significant other. You got time this afternoon, go on out there. Or you can actually go to the grocery store and grab a bottle and take it home. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. Thank you very much for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
Thank you, Bobby. And some more that we are going to get into here from Jose Rodriguez. He says SEC defenses tend to get exposed more in the postseason. Were we overrated due to the competition this season, especially after our first 2 games?
It's possible. I mean, but you can't say you're overrated if you're ranked number 1 and now you're in the Final Four, right? I will say this: the SEC, and don't take this wrong, I think the SEC was a little weak this year, and it was because of quarterback play. I mean, look, at one time this year, we were talking about Garrett Nussmeier being the best quarterback in the SEC. Okay, Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a career NFL backup, most likely. That's a reality. I don't think Jackson Dart's a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I think that reality of it is that quarterback play in the SEC was not as good this season. I mean, we were talking about Diego Pavia being the best quarterback, and he's a glorified fullback. I mean, so the thing about the SEC this year, I think their quarterback play was not good, not great.
Well, and I think this too. I think Quinn up and down, Carson Beck down at times. That the quarterbacks that were supposed to play really well in conference did not play well in conference. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, Carson Beck had 12 interceptions in SEC play alone. Quinn had the injury. I mean, it wasn't good. You know, I'm a little different on Nussmeier. I think he's a really good player who starts in the NFL. I mean, that stuff comes down to later, what teams you're on and who's around you at the position. But I look for the Texas defense, though. We talked about this. No matter what you think of Nussmeier draft pick, Jackson Dart draft pick, Texas didn't, outside of Beck, they didn't get the quarterbacks in this league on the schedule. The last 2 games, they've got guys who will play in the league on some level at quarterback. Absolutely. And I do believe those guys are worth 7 to 10 points a game. That's just what I believe. If you play a really good quarterback, they're worth 7 to 10 points a game, even if you have a really good defense.
So I just want to add to what I said here. It's not just unique to the SEC this year. It's all of college football. There are no great, just phenomenal quarterbacks in college football right now. Shedeur Sanders, maybe, but is he 1-1? Is he really the guy? I don't see him as a 1-1. Cam Ward throws the ball into coverage. A lot.
Fumbles a lot.
Yeah, and so I would just say this. It wasn't just the SEC that was down in quarterbacks, and that's why I think 3 of the 4 teams you're looking at right now are run heavy and power run heavy. Notre Dame is power run all the way with play action. James Franklin is run heavy, play action. Chip Kelly is mostly run heavy with play action. Steve Sarkisian is the only one that's got what I would call a typical pro style attack.
By the way, 3 transfer quarterbacks out of the 4 teams. And I think that's one of the things in college football. And look, guys have to find their opportunities. But in terms of having the best quarterback play you can in the college game, guys going to 2 and 3 different schools, having 2 and 3 different OCs at the college level. I know it's NFL's different, but man, there's not really a lot of stay and develop for quarterbacks in a system with a coach in a scheme anymore. These guys are bouncing around, and I get it. NIL. I'll give Sam Levitt credit if he comes back to Arizona State next year, because he will get bigger offers to leave than Arizona State. If he comes back, I'll actually tip my cap to that guy, especially because he made himself a hell of a lot of money in a loss on Wednesday, if he wants it. But these guys bounce around so much, Bobby. There's a lack of continuity. Now, there's maybe a transfer quarterback's a national champion. Maybe that guy came from Duke. Maybe it's Quinn who came from Ohio State. Maybe it's Howard who was at Kansas State, and now he has NFL guys all around him, and he wins a title. We'll see. Maybe Drew Allar sticking with Penn State there as a second-year star. Maybe he gets it done. He's the only guy that is where he started, though, of all these four quarterbacks. But I think there's so much bouncing around at the quarterback position, too. It kind of stunts these guys, and I get why they do it. It's great for them. But it kind of stunts teams at times and stunts players' development a little bit.
Our next one, guys, comes from Owen. And Owen says, why does everyone keep saying we have to run the ball? You can't force it. Our short passing game is like the run. Also, the passing game can set up the run. The passing game is working.
When you're up 17-3, you can try to force the run.
Yeah.
They didn't force the run out of the gate. They threw the first two balls. But when you're up 17-3, you try to force the run to shorten the game. That's what happened, I think, a little bit, Owen. Against Ohio State, I don't think you can. And I think you're right. So did Steve Sarkisian think he was going to be up, 14 or after touching the ball once? No. But that's I agree with you. You can't force it, not in games like this. Not in the national semifinals. You have to roll with what's working, and you have to be able to compete every single series. No starting at 2nd and 10 because you threw the ball deep and it wasn't even close. You have to play the odds a little bit better in this game, in my opinion.
And staying on the run here for a second, Joey wants to know, why didn't we run the ball at times around the goal line? Really thought we would run better against Arizona State. Thought Blue would get more touches.
Blue did try it around the goal line and got, a yard or two. My take on that for you guys, and just ask y'all's opinion. I don't know that they tried running at ASU enough. They tried running horizontally, and ASU was a quick defensive unit, and that kind of played into ASU's hands a little bit. But ASU was also adding people to the box and flying their safety up in run situations. I don't know all of what went wrong against Arizona State in the run game, but I attribute it to two things: a quick defensive front and Arizona State's willingness to bring its safeties up. Those are the two things.
Yeah, in the red zone, you got to have a little more run at them at times.
Yep.
So you just have to. By the way, Therese Armstead, tell all your Ohio State friends, come on in. Let's have some fun the next 9 days.
Respectful fun.
7 now, Jerry. It's 7. It's already
7.
Yeah, it's already 7.
All right, Justin Yarbrough, thank you for your super chat as always. We've not seen many wide receiver screens lately. Hope to see a few versus Ohio State. Colin Coward says we'll get rolled versus Ohio State. I would have that clip posted all over the facility on repeat. Of course, he's not the only one. I've seen some other ESPN analysts and Fox say the same.
I would not use the term analyst as it relates to Colin Cowherd.
No.
I would, I think he's a good announcer and a good, brings up, some good conversation, but analyst is not a word I would attach to his name. Personally, what he says about college football and games matter very little, and usually are just on the face what he sees. We'll see. I mean, look, I will say this. We might get rolled by Ohio State. Might be a close game. Might be a Longhorn win.
Yeah.
Colin Cowherd doesn't know. The wide receiver screen thing is interesting to me. We have not seen that. We've seen a lot fewer, frankly, since Isaiah Bond has gone out, Jerry.
Yeah.
And that has taken something out of the playbook. They haven't went to DeAndre Moore on that. They haven't went to Ryan Wingo because I think personally Wingo and Moore are the two better blockers, and Moore may be and Bond may be the best runner of the group. So you see less of that.
I think that's what kind of makes Bond and I think it's hurt Texas. And that doesn't mean Ryan Wingo's not going to be a higher draft pick or a better player long term. But what has hurt this Texas offense with Bond out is there aren't many guys that you have in the perimeter passing game and the screen game, but then can send 4-3 down the field at the same time. So that is he really opens up. We talked about this before the season. Isaiah Bond really opens up Sark's entire playbook. And without him, I think that passing game playbook's a little more restricted. And some people say, well, that's maybe Quinn when he's been up and down and injured. But there's an element of Bond that, as good as the other receivers are, it all has to fit together. He's your most explosive guy in the perimeter screen game, but he's also your fastest guy vertically. And both of those things have been eliminated without him. So it does change what Sark ideally wants to do to maximize his passing game. And I think that's hurt Texas. I think it's probably underrated. It's hurt Texas offense in SEC play because he was not healthy after that hit against Oklahoma.
All right, something that a lot of people have asked, Bobby. John here, for example, says, I love the show. Has OTF decided where you'll be tailgating in Arlington next week? And has Jerry officially given Bevo a suite at the Death Star?
Well, I thought he was talking to me.
I don't know that they've announced anything on Bevo yet. We'll check in on that for sure. We are doing a tailgate the day of the game. It is going to be at a place that literally is right next door to AT&T Stadium. I will put a link. We'll put a link in the chat here for everybody, and I'll also put a link up on ontexasfootball.com. It's an all-you-can-eat, all-you-can-drink tailgate starting at 3 o'clock on Friday. I believe the name of the place is Boiling Tails Company. It literally is within a tenth of a mile to 2/10 of a mile. You literally just walk across the street to Cowboy Stadium. We have right now 500 tickets on sale. I think we've already sold 100 and something of them through our friends over at Surly Horns as well. So please feel free to get that. And it will be first come, first serve on tickets. We'll see exactly how many they can have. They can host, I think, up to 1,000 people. But Vince Young is also going to be there and is promoting the event. So we'll see how it all goes. But please join us. Jerry and I will definitely be there. Blake, I don't know if you're going to be able to join, but we'll be doing our pregame from that venue and from that tailgate. It literally is walking right across the street from Cowboy Stadium.
Hey, and by the way, if they won't let Bevo in, bring him on over to this.
Yeah.
Bring him on over to this, man. Let people get their picture made with Bevo. He can be part of the tailgate. It'll be Bevo's tailgate.
Okay, let's see here. Flying Tank says, my first game was awesome, and I definitely got my money's worth. LOL. My dad's a Clemson fan, but both of us were jumping and hugging at the end. No BS. Do we have a chance against Ohio State?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't look. I don't know if Texas is going to win the game. I don't. But anybody, national analysts or anybody counting Texas out, I think you're fooling yourself. I mean, Ohio. I will say this: the worst thing that can happen to Texas is what happened to Oregon. And that is jumping out on Texas early. If Ohio State jumps out on Texas early, that is a recipe for pain for Texas because it'll make Quinn Ewers press. It'll make Steve Sarkisian press. If Texas starts off strong, I think it's going to be a good game to the end.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's where my bottom line is on this. We're at the point of the proceedings where any of these four teams could win the national championship. People could argue Ohio State's playing the best based on the last two playoff games. I could hear the argument, but any of these four teams could win the national championship here. We're past the point. When this playoff started, you could circle Boise, Arizona State, Clemson, and Indiana State. Those guys aren't going to go win the national championship. You could have put Georgia in the group that possibility could, and who am I forgetting? The 6 team that we talked about. But we're at the point now where there's no Cinderella at the dance. Any of these 4 teams can win the national championship right now. Bottom line, it would not surprise me if any of these 4 at the end hoisted the trophy. And I'll say this, we said at the beginning of the show, the cool thing about this playoff is, as much as I've loved all of it, one coach is about to win his first national championship. And it would be, maybe it's meant to be for Ryan Day because he was about to be fired. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's James Franklin because he could never win the big game. Shoot, he just won 4 in a row. Maybe it's Marcus Freeman because Notre Dame gave him a chance to be a head coach with 0 head coaching experience. They went against the grain of what everybody thinks. We go back to the years of Texas telling Bob Stoops, you don't have any skins on the wall, baby. We can't hire you. Somebody's about to win their first national championship. And that's pretty cool.
Hey, I want to say real quick before we get back, and I've said this a few times in the chat today, and we're well aware of people complaining about the commercials. That's actually not us. We have nothing to do with that. That's YouTube. That's out of our control, but we'll look into it. But we apologize about that because, like I said, it's out of our hands on that. So sorry. I've seen a lot of people bring it up here in the past few minutes.
By the way, and I ended without saying this too. Steve Sarkisian wins a national championship. What a redemption story for his career it would be. To come full circle. There's some great stories among these 4 head coaches here. Somebody's going to win a title. A month ago, Ohio State fans said, we joked, we said, Ryan Day will never get it done. Born on third base, can't get home, even with RIP Ricky Henderson's base stealing ability. James Franklin can't win the big game, right? Marcus Freeman, the guy was hired without ever being a head coach. Very rare. And then Steve Sarkisian with what he went through, put himself through. It's going to be, there's some cool stories headed in this Final Four from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah. We have a few super chats here, kind of all along the same lines. So I'm going to read them together. This first one from Alessandro. And Alessandro says, what's the clearest path of victory for the Horns? And then Peyton Ross says, rarely does Texas have to throw the kitchen sink. This is one of those games, in my opinion. How do we put out Ohio State's fire? They are playing very confident.
Physicality and get after the quarterback. A couple of defensive stops starts putting doubt in an offense's head. And then I'll also attack Ohio State's defense in a way that they're not used to being attacked. Okay, pass protect enough. Start managing some first downs. Get in the end zone. You're right. Texas does have to throw the kitchen sink, but when I talk about throwing the kitchen sink at somebody, at least from a Texas perspective, I'm not talking about throwing halfback passes.
Right.
I'm talking about using tempo at times. I'm talking about throwing outside screen game and using that. I'm talking about throwing over the middle. I'm talking about using all of your offensive arsenal to throw the kitchen sink, not trick plays. I'm not talking about a fake punt. I'm talking about use the arsenal that you have to its complete level and do it at a high level. Jerry talked about it earlier. This game will come down to execution, one team or the other. Crazy stat, Ohio State hasn't had a holding call on an opponent since Big Ten play started.
Yeah.
That is amazing to me.
That's
the
amazing.
Big Ten doesn't call holding.
They don't.
I mean, look, I put a post up yesterday. I don't know if y'all saw that post that I put up, but Jermaine Lolay's jersey, his arm is being pulled by one guy and his jersey's being pulled by another.
Yes.
Scatterbo is running right behind him. I mean, it's like he's not being held once, he's being held twice by 2 different people.
So what does that do for this game? It's going to be Big 12 or ACC. Somebody posted a super chat earlier that said it's not going to be Kevin Marr, which for the chat's sake, I'm glad. If it's Big 12 officiating, how is that different from Big 10 officiating?
It means they'll call Big 12 will call one hold a game in my opinion, and 3 or 4 pass interferences. That's just been doing 20 years of that league. That's what they do. They call 1 hold and 3 or 4 pass interference. The SEC calls 4 holds and 1 pass interference.
Yep.
The Big Ten, no holds and rarely calls any pass interference. I mean, it's what it is. I want to say this about Brett Yormark. He's not wrong about needing college football standards.
Right.
He's not the person to talk about it because he's such a nitwit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like me asking, that would be like me running NASA's Space Center. I have no engineering knowledge. That Brett Yormark knows nothing about college football. He's trying to figure out how to get a game in Madison Square Garden for basketball.
Yes, no doubt. No doubt. Hey, by the way, we need to mention, since you brought up Brett Yormark, congrats, Texas women's basketball team. Huge win last night at Oklahoma. One, you beat your rival and you were down early, got smoked on the boards, 44-28. Jordan Lee, the freshman, hit 4 threes off the bench. They need her. They got to have the shooter on this team. Layla Filia, the transfer from Michigan, really high hopes for her, has battled through injuries. I don't think we see her this year, by the way, but we'll see if that changes. I think maybe she sees if she can get an extra year and come back. That was a big piece of this team. Jordan Lee's ability to shoot the basketball consistently huge for this. Flip side, Texas got out-rebounded. We're down early, 44-28. Their best shooter went 1 of 11 from 3. That's normally a loss for a team. So congrats to the Texas women. Why that's a big win is you're staring at a 26-5, 27-4 type regular season if you stay healthy. That win over Oklahoma was ranked 9, a road win. That's a seeding game come NCAA tournament time. So if you're on the line for a 1 or 2 seed or a 2 or 3 seed, that's a really big win for me. And then to piggyback off of that, the men play at A&M Saturday night. And so we'll see if the Aggies mount a charge and get a big win over the Longhorns. We'll see. A&M, key in that game for Texas, got to keep the guards off the free throw line for A&M. Those guys get to the line quite a bit. Zurich Phelps, Wade Taylor. Wade Taylor's their 3-point shooter and not a great 3-point shooting team. This is where offensively Texas has parts they get tested. You're going to have to go score 72, 74 points on the road to begin SEC play. And Blake, I don't know if we have it. Texas has as both difficult of a 5-game starting stretch than 8-game starting stretch as any Texas team I've ever seen. And they played the Big 12 a long time. This is where your offense has to score baskets. You have to be able to score 70-plus points because they literally, the first 5 SEC games is at A&M, number 1 Tennessee, number 2 Auburn, at Oklahoma ranked 13, or A&M's 13, ranked 15, and at Florida, who's undefeated, ranked 6. You can go 1-4. You're going to go 1-4 or 0-5 if you score 62 points a game. You got to be able to put 70 on the board. This is where it starts offensively. You have to be able to score the ball because I don't care how good a defense you play. Those teams are going to score points on you. So you got to be able to score the basketball.
I want to add one thing about the women's game. I turned it on there because Ole Miss was running away with Duke in the bowl game last night. Texas was tied with Oklahoma going into the 4th quarter of the women's game. Ended up winning by 7. Texas was nails down the stretch. I think Coach Vic has something a little special brewing right now. Rory Harmon, by the way, the point guard is absolutely back. She was back last night and a big factor in that game.
Yeah. And for those talking about the referees, I have not been able to find the assignments yet. Usually one of the sites that I use that's up and up on that type of thing, they still haven't posted it. So I don't know if the actual referee crew has been announced yet.
Like, I do have something for you to look up if you don't mind. As we get to more, we'll incorporate some more chat questions here. But can you look up who the favorite is in Vegas to win the national championship for football and what the odds are?
Got to be Ohio State right now.
You would think it's Ohio State with their 2 very convincing wins.
I sure can.
That's a question.
Yeah, it is, Bobby. And I'm having some technical difficulties, or I'd bring it up on screen for you guys. So I'm just, since there's only 4, I'm going to just tell y'all. Ohio State is plus 100. They are the favorites.
They're the odds on. Yeah.
Notre Dame is plus 350. Texas is plus 400, and Penn State is plus 450.
They're not counting. They don't like James Franklin
No,
getting 2 games back to back, do they?
no, not at all.
Not he's not a 2-game big winner back to back. That's for sure.
I hope we don't have to talk about this because it means Texas loses. But could you imagine Marcus Freeman denying Ryan Day a national title? Being former Ohio State linebacker, the head coach at Notre Dame. Ouch! Ouch! How would you like that when? What is it? Charisse in the chat. How would that?
I want to say this: Ohio State, Notre Dame does not match up well at all with Ohio State. They can't throw the ball well enough.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, Texas and Penn State have a chance against Ohio State because they have 2 quarterbacks that can throw the ball. Riley Leonard does not match up well against Ohio State. He matches up well against Penn State though, because that game could be played in the phone booth and James Franklin would be fine instead of actually trying to move the ball. But that's my opinion.
Hell no, says. What are Quinn's passing stats after we beat Ohio State, and running stats?
Oh, too early for me. Too early for me on that one. From a running standpoint, I think Texas needs to rush the ball for 75. And I mean, with the running backs, they need to hit 75 yards. If they have no running game, it's going to be tough.
Texas needs to pass for at least 275 to beat Ohio State. And be really good in the red zone, by the way. Really, really good. Whatever Sark's got, we need to see it.
Yeah, I look, you can't have a and I think Texas is better personnel. You can't have an Oregon game rushing the football against Ohio State, though. That's a recipe for loss. Oregon had negative 23 rushing yards officially in that game.
They were playing from behind the whole
They
game.
were, but they just got stuffed, though. They just got stuffed. I mean, like they couldn't, like Jordan James, running back 7 for 14. Their running backs had 13 carries for 17 yards. Texas has to. I mean, if Texas gets stuffed in the run game, that won't be good. You gotta possess the ball a little bit in this game too, I think.
I definitely think that.
Got a couple of super chats on Sadir Mitchell, guys. So we're going to get to those. D-Lime says, Sadir Mitchell quitting on his team helped to wear down the defensive line. It was an issue last game, and it will continue to be an issue. And then Dante adds, and thank you, Dante, what was up with Sadir Mitchell? The kid is 6'6", 350, and a freshman. And did we not want to throw a money bag to the Purdue tight end? Was he not a must? So we'll start with Sadir.
On Sadir, he only played 36 snaps in 12 games. So I don't know about that. I do think, though, if it's 3 or 4 snaps just playing up the middle, would he have been tougher to move in that game? Potentially. When the game started, when they started wearing down Texas, I can see his point of the super chat. I can see that point. Sadir, look, I mean, I love Sadir. Great kid, funny kid. He just didn't make the moves to maximize his talent and develop. I don't know any other way to say it. I hope he gets it done. He's a very talented kid. There's a reason Texas and Georgia fought to the bitter end for him. It's not because he lacks talent. He has got it. He's got size, quickness, strength. I hope he comes closer to his ceiling than he showed he was at Texas, because he still has that ability. But he was always 1 step forward, 2 steps back in all these regards at Texas, and I hope he figures it out.
And then the second part about Max Clare.
He signed ended up signing with Ohio State. My understanding was he wasn't as big as he was listed. And so Texas wanted a bigger tight end. So Texas did not push hard. After bringing him in, they did not push hard for him.
Doesn't mean he won't be a good player at Ohio State, being an NFL draft pick. It's just
wasn't what Texas was looking for, is what I was told. You agree with that, Jerry? Same thing?
That's what we heard, yeah.
Okay, guys, our next super chat here comes from Ben. Speaking of tight ends, he says, I think Helm has to be heavily involved in order for Texas to win on Friday or next Friday. He had a good game, but only 3 receptions against Arizona State. What are your thoughts?
I'm going back to the Michigan game right now. Okay. And going to read these stats for you. And you tell me whether or not you think Gunnar Helm needs to be used more. 7 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. He's going to need to be used early and often. It'll keep linebackers at bay from rushing too much upfield, for running the run plays, or over the right word. Pursuing. Yeah. The run plays. It'll keep people back. It'll keep the safeties back. I think you have to use the tight end over the middle of the field too. It can't just be these delayed screens. It has to be in the actual passing game. Sark may not want to do that because that could cause batted balls. That, especially in games where you have it in hand, Sark tends to avoid the middle of the field because that's how he thinks turnovers can happen that way. And that's why he throws outside more. I don't think you can worry about that in this game. I think you have to be aggressive. And so using and utilizing Gunnar Helm is one piece of that, in my opinion.
All right. And then we have one here from, if I can get this going, the real Will Can. He said, sick of the belly aching about the non-call on targeting. If it wasn't targeting on Isaiah Bond, then it wasn't targeting on Michael Taft.
Yeah. So my whole thought on this is what's going to happen through this playoff, I think, because of that play, and I bet there's another one in these semifinal games that's going to be questionable, is that they have to look at the rule, one, and then they have to look at the penalty. You can't just have targeting penalty, guy kicked out of game, because then you're suspended for the first half of the day. That needs to be a malicious intent type of thing for me. They have to change this. They're gonna have to change this to a running into the kicker versus roughing the kicker scenario for me. There's a 5-yard penalty there and a 15-yard penalty there, first of all. And then you can't just boom, ejected, and then a guy misses the first half of the next game automatically if there wasn't malicious intent, if it was just a targeting penalty. They're gonna have to make changes. And I think whether it's the Taft play, because sometimes it's the plays that get so much attention that push this, but then they also have to look at the targeting rule, because the thing I have an issue with that play, because you've seen it so many times in games. If you stand on the sidelines of a high school football game, you'll see that play every Friday night at some point. When an offensive player, he may be 6-8 inches higher off the ground, taller, I should say, through his body structure when he goes and catches a football. But the second he sees somebody in his peripheral, he is going to sink his hips to make a football move.
He's going to crouch. Yeah.
Yeah, when Michael Taft was going to dislodge the ball from the player, if the guy is extended for the football at the timing of the hit, he hits him here. The guy sank 6 to 8 inches to try to make a football play. A defensive player that's moving full speed, doing his job, does not have time to adjust his body to that. That's my problem with the rule, is it takes out what they're doing is they're taking out the natural movement of an offensive player who makes a play. That you can't, there's got to be some.
They're not taking it out. They're penalizing the defense for it.
Yeah, there's got to be some separation of the rule there.
Well, I got to say this. You want to start taking it out? Start calling using the crown of your helmet by a running back. How many times do you see a running back literally just try to bulldoze somebody using the crown of their helmet?
Yeah.
Why is targeting only on a defensive player? I mean, not trying to be.
Yeah.
You want to stop it, call it both ways. That's my take. That's my problem with targeting right now.
That's the point, right? It's running backs to your point. What do? They play high to low. They drop their pads on contact and thrust up on you with the crown of their helmet. And if you're a defensive back and you're closing in on a football to make a play, your job is to get the guy to the ground, dislodge the football. You cannot control when that guy drops his hips to make a move against you. And if he drops his hips, then that becomes a face mask to face mask or helmet contact at times. You cannot penalize a defender throwing him out of a game for that. That you just can't. That's BS to me. Like they have to look at this. And I agree with you, Bobby. I mean, a running back plays high to low. His job is to drop his pads and explode through you on contact. And there's crowns of the helmet involved in that sometimes.
You want to look, Joe Paterno, say what you will about him. He said, you want to stop people from spearing and stop running backs and defensive backs from using the crown of their helmet. He said, go back to leather helmets. He said that'll stop it quick. And so I think that's what's happened. They've taken it out of the defensive side of the game a little bit, and I think it's made the game more healthy. It really has. I think you see players adopting and adapting to the new rules in a really good way, in a healthy way. Now they need to do the same on the offensive side of the ball, in my opinion. Do there need to be tweaks, to your point, Jerry, on the ruling itself? I'm all game for it. Just like I think there should be a 5-yard penalty for face mask and a 15.
Exactly.
I mean, look, somebody grazes a face mask. They're calling 15-yard penalty and changing entire drives right now. Anyways, I digress. I think it needs to be on both sides of the ball. You can't just lower your head as a running back and expect somebody to take it. I mean, it's not, and then if you are even in there with your, it's not, I don't agree with it.
One other while we're talking about officials. Gray Man, thank you for the super chat, says, did you catch the flag thrown just a second before Taft committed the face mask when Scattaboo clearly pushed off to get that catch? Watch it again. Sports betting has ruined football.
No, they called that penalty on Taft, defensive pass interference. Actually, there was 2 flags on the play. There was the obvious face mask, but they actually called Taft for defensive pass interference. And Arizona State declined that penalty, took the result of the play. So I don't think that was sports betting, Gray Man. That's conspiracy thinking there.
All right, Bobby, before we get to our last round of super chats, can you let everyone know about BKCW one last time, please, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to BKCW. They signed up for another year of sponsoring On Texas Football and Coffee and Football. Thank you so much. All season long, you've heard us talk about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. Renewal time rolls around. You scramble for quotes, yet end up stuck with a higher price. BKCW equips you with the ability to break that cycle. They give you a wide variety of tools like safety training programs, a dedicated risk consultant to save you time, and they make your employees safer and show insurance companies that your business is a good fit. Because let's face it, when it comes to premiums, most factors are out of your control. BKCW focuses on what you can control, and that's your risk profile. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started and get the support you deserve. Again, that's BKCW, Austin owned and UT owned business right there off of Lamar, 512-250-5055.
All right, guys. Then, as I said, more super chats on the way here. This one from Bradford. He says, Quinn A. Since Florida has risen drastically. Health, confidence, and play calling are factors. Also, that's without Bond doing much. Quinn Ewers' legacy run.
Look, I think that we talked about it yesterday, and I completely agree. 4th and 13 throw is going to go down in the annals in UT football history. Where will it go down? Where will it rank? I think some of that's yet to be determined. If Texas ends up winning a national championship, it's going to go down pretty darn high. But Texas doesn't. It maybe is kind of like roll left for James Brown against Nebraska. Still pretty high because it was clutch. I mean, it's extraordinarily clutch, and it's actually absolutely his legacy. Will be one of the things they show on his highlight reel 10 years from now or 15 years from now when he comes back and gets inducted in the Longhorn Hall of Honor and all that stuff.
By the way, I did find out, fellas, the referee crews have not been announced, so you still could see Kevin Moore. I'm not saying you will, but there's
that person seemed like he had inside knowledge. We're going to come back to that one if he did. That may have been a friend of good old Kev's.
There you go. Jesse says, do you think Sark reveals just enough to win games and doesn't care about style points? Maybe he doesn't want to give up any tape. Is there more left in the bag?
At times, yes, but Arizona State, no, because he was throwing deep when he could have been running out the clock.
I would say this too. Yes, there's more left in the bag because he pulled out that tight end leak play in the second overtime. Where was that play on somewhere in the fourth quarter to Gunnar Helm when we needed 6? That, yes, there is more in the bag. He's got to get to it and put it all out there on display. This is going to be a big game for Steve Sarkisian and his offense. Really believe that.
No. Hey, somebody asked in the chat earlier, and it's a really good question as we get more into this game. Who's the best passing offense Texas has faced, Ohio State's faced out of or outside of Oregon? Probably be Indiana. They haven't faced another big time one. Penn State but they're not really. I mean,
Penn State's offensive style is not. I mean,
no, there's not. And Drew Allar is not the same Drew Allar as a player. He's actually grown the last half of the year a little bit and given them more of a chance down the field. No, I mean, it's Oregon and it's Texas. That Oregon's the only high-end passing offensive team. And stats may say something otherwise. I mean, like there may have been a team that's thrown for a lot of yards, but it's Oregon is the one.
Did Ohio State play Maryland?
No.
Okay.
No, Ohio State has played at Michigan State, Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, Michigan. Tennessee, first round of playoff.
And Tennessee's not a passing team, even though they pretend to be. Yeah, that's true. Good question. The other part of that question was, does Sark care about style points? I think he does when you're playing UTSA, maybe. I think when you're playing Kentucky or Arkansas or Arizona State, I don't think he cares about style points. I think he cares about a victory. And he calls the game that way. I mean, he clearly calls the game that way. So,
by the way, somebody asked, where is Ohio State's pass defense ranked? They're ranked number 1 yards per game allowed, 152.4. But it kind of goes back. It's a hidden stat. It kind of goes back to they haven't played a lot of high-level passing teams. They played Oregon twice this year.
It's 420 somewhere. It says, is Texas looking at the burner from Arkansas? Bobby.
Yeah, Desmond James is his name. He had a big bowl game performance. He's already set up 5 visits. Texas is not one of them. Mario Satania's kid, the former track coach at Texas, by the way, Isaiah Satania, he actually transferred to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That was the another of the
by the way, that's a really smart transfer. He saw opportunity. Hey, Ski Break, this made me laugh for another reason. I think Sark gets $500K if he wins. Congrats to Sark if he does get get on top of the 10 million. But this brought up a question that I saw something I saw yesterday. So the 4 teams that are in the college football semifinal get 14 million apiece to be spread into their pie of their conference. Oh, unless you're Notre Dame, you get to keep it all. So does that mean, and is somebody in the chat, I haven't looked this up, since Notre Dame's not officially an ACC member, do they actually get to keep the whole 14, or does a smaller portion of that go to the ACC since they play ACC teams every year? I don't know the answer. Somebody can probably find that, but $14 million per team in the college football semifinal dispersed to their conferences. Bobby, I don't know if you know the percentages on that. Obviously, Texas has to keep a little bit larger percentage because they're in the game versus the other teams in the conference, you would think.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I want to go back when we first opened this, guys. One of the things we talked about is a look back at how these Final Four teams right now is like a rehash of 1970s or whatever. When Texas won the Cotton Bowl in 1969, or I guess it was the 70 Cotton Bowl, the 1969 season over Notre Dame. The final four ranked teams of that regular season were Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
How about that?
Wow.
So this is a throwback game in that regard.
Huh.
It's a that's two generations. You know, that's why that is a throwback game.
That's crazy. All right. This next one here comes from Jacob. We appreciate your kind words and your super chat, Jacob. He says, I've been watching OTF for a minute now. Best Texas football channel there is. Hook 'em.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. We went over 68,000 subscribers, guys. That's awesome. Couldn't do it without y'all. And thank you all for tuning in each and every morning and obviously throughout the day as well. And then Texas Jasper says there were creases that were not exploited. In my opinion, Jarrett Gibson could be a great spark, especially in pony package with pass protection help. You can still have a pass game with that formation. What say y'all? I bet I'm going to add this too from Casey since we're talking about Gibson. Why don't we use Gibson in obvious short yardage runs?
They've used him the last couple games in short yardage as a decoy because they only used him in short yardage previously, right? And gave him carries. So that take that out of the equation now that we've answered that. They have used him, and they've used him as a decoy now too. Could he be a great spark in the pony package? I think that part of when Sark goes to that pony package, he's actually passing out of it more now than he did a year ago. A year ago, he was running out of it a lot. But a year ago, he had Cedric Baxter and or Jonathan Brooks to be a lead back and actually be a blocker. Neither Jaden Blue nor Trey Wisner are going to light you up as a blocker. Now, they can be willing blockers, but they're not true blockers. So be aware of that. As far as Jarrett Gibson, look, I think he's behind the other two right now. And if they thought he was going to be a difference maker, they in these games, they'd be playing him. They'd be playing him. He's had ball security issues Jerry's talked about before as well that I agree with. They may give them some hesitation, but that's where I'm at with it.
All right. And then Rob Enfield, this was a hot topic earlier in the chat here. Of course, Sark went up. Y'all already know where I'm going with this. But went up and, I guess hugged him. But
here's what I would say to that is that's all well and good, but did Saban ever have a guy miss two in a row? Sark probably didn't say anything to him on the first kick. And he missed it. And so he said, probably, what the hell? I'm going to go see if talking to him helps. Right? I mean, Saban's probably right. I would leave him alone too. But after you sit there and watch him miss the first one, you're just going to go let him miss another one without talking to him? So I get it. But look, that was a bad miss, Jerry. I just don't know.
Yeah, that was a bad miss.
It was a flat-footed club kick. Oh, Bert, come on. You got a week here, Bert. Step up.
It was bad.
By the way, I found the story. It says Notre Dame keeps all $14 million. Wow.
It's a healthy chunk of change, baby.
And think about this. If they win the next game, that's going to add to it. where they don't have to give up any. They can come out here with 25, 26 mil and not have to give it to anybody.
All right, Brett Mayfield. If the game ended with the final score of 24-8, what do you think the spread would be? I don't think it would be Ohio State -6.
I think that's a good point. I mean, it's definitely a good discussion, but I think the way Ohio State beat down Oregon 34-0 with less than a minute to go in the first half after beating down Tennessee, I'm not sure it would have changed that much. I think the way Ohio State is looking right now, but you may be right. But it did open 5, right? It opened 5.5.
Yes, you are correct. It opened at 5. It has moved to 6 because of all the money coming in on Ohio State. So you are correct. And then James, thank you, James. He says, Badger fan living through on Texas football. Blue is your X factor. If Sark uses him as a receiver against the linebackers, I would love a Texas win. No one in the big likes whiny Ohio State.
There you go.
They are the team that in the Big Ten that everybody loves to hate, aren't they? Like from afar, you'd think it might be Michigan, but I think the other big state universities see themselves more similarly to Michigan than they do Ohio State. Yeah. Blue could be an X factor. He was against Michigan in the passing game. I think you're going to need all their horses, James. And thank you for stepping in here on Texas football. Appreciate you.
By the way, Skibrick, what I was asking about Notre Dame is since they play 4 ACC members a year, did they have to give a little cut to the ACC even though they're not in the conference? But I read an article that says they don't. I just wondered about that. I didn't know the answer. The other thing I want to say about that's crazy about this game is, I mean, this game's going to be played different teams, but once again to start the 2025 season in Columbus. This is pretty cool that these two teams are playing in the college football semifinal, and the loser of this game has the whole off season to want that game when they play again to start the 25 season.
Jerry, a super chat from Blake, not me. Jerry, you worked at ESPN. Do some of those analysts even watch the games they have takes on?
I only knew the guys I worked with, so I can't really comment on that. I know we have him on the show. A friend of mine, Tom Luganbill, is he does his homework big time.
I can tell you, no, they don't.
Well, I mean, Stephen A. Smith said he had never watched Scatabo till Saturday, but I don't really consider him a college football guy. No. In that's not his job for ESPN. So to be fair in that regard. Yes,
I agree. That's what I'm saying. It's like they can't talk. You can't sit there and talk about the NBA, hockey, pro NFL. Football, and then college football. I mean, you don't have enough time in the day.
No.
All right, 2 more here, fellas, and apparently both about the 4th and 13. Splendid Daddy, formerly Sugar Daddy, says we blocked up that 4th and 13, baby. Hook them. And then T-Live, Bobby Jerry was 4th and 13. The same play ran versus Bama to Mitchell for a touchdown. Texas 45-38.
You know what? I think it was with one difference. Wingo ran up the. So I remember. This is a great question. Actually, got me excited. I think it was the same route by A.D. Mitchell. Okay, but I think Texas tweaked the backside. I think whoever was on the backside of that play against Alabama was running a crosser while Mitchell ran the nod route, if that makes sense. So while DeAndre Moore ran the clear out and ran the out route essentially to the play side, I think in the game against Alabama, the left wide receiver, whoever that was, did not just run a go. I think they either ran a stop route or something short of the chains. Wingo ran through the chains.
Yeah.
He ran deep also.
Yeah.
I don't think Texas in that play against Alabama that Mitchell made on the goal line, I don't think they ran too vertical.
No, they ran a crosser drag.
That's what I thought. And so similar, very, very. I mean, the concept that was a nod route by A.D. Mitchell. So good call. That's a good memory. Good memory.
And we got one more that just came in. This one from Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. He says on Josh Pate's show before the games this week, he said FanDuel would have Ohio State 1.5 to 2 as a 2-point favorite. So those games definitely changed it. But I will say Josh Pate doesn't set the lines. That was just what he was projecting it to be. So it's hard to say. I mean, who really knows?
Yeah, I think FanDuel may be one of his sponsors, so he asked somebody something. I think that the game should change it. Ohio State looked like a juggernaut. Texas looked like they couldn't get out of neutral for 2 quarters.
Yeah.
That's the way the world works. At the same time, does it really change my feelings on this game? Not much. It really doesn't. I mean, I think Texas is going to have to play its best game of the year to win the football game. And I would have thought that going into it.
And Ohio State may too.
Yes.
I mean, because Oregon's not good on defense. So, like we talked about it, Oregon's not a good defensive team. They've given up 34 to Boise, 32 to Ohio State. Both those games at home, by the way, 38. The last time they were on the field, they gave up 38 and 37 because Franklin was chasing points when he shouldn't have been. 38 points, let's just say, and 518 yards to Penn State. That's not what you see out of the Penn State offense very often. Penn State had 390 yards against Boise. Hey, Oregon was on the field. They were bad on defense, and they were bad on defense again against Ohio State.
Jerry, I want to bring this one up from Tango Lima Foxtrot. We're ignoring the counterfactual concerning the portal additions in games this season. It's not like we wouldn't have been able to make those plays if they weren't on the team. So you think another wide receiver could have run the nod route? You think another safety would have had 5 interceptions than Makuba? And you think another punt returner would have ran back that kick for Silas Bolden? That's what you're telling me. And another defensive end / linebacker would have had 2 sacks. I mean, I don't agree with you. I think the portal, Texas knocked the portal out of the park, and the proof is in the pudding.
Oh, well,
knocked it out of the park.
My only response to that was there's a reason Dabo's going to the portal now.
Yeah,
he watched all season. He played Georgia, and he was like, "Ooh, I got beat by guys that were from the portal. Travis Etienne, blah blah blah. London Humphreys had a touchdown against him in that game. You go up against Texas, and you're prepping for that game, and you're like, wow. I mean, like he's having to adapt to it. So yeah, I mean, I agree with Bobby on that. Would Texas have been a playoff team without A.D. Mitchell 2 years ago?
No. Who else makes that catch against TCU? I mean, yeah. So look, I hear you. There is a opportunity cost by going to the portal. I would argue that opportunity cost is weighed in Texas's favor heavily, not just
The other thing I would say was maybe think about different players on the Texas team. Would Texas still be playing football this year if they said we're good at D tackle, we're not going to the portal? And there was no Lole, no Norton.
The answer is no.
One other super chat that just came in from Jay Padilla. Thank you. And it says, what exactly is the issue with the offense? I do not recall watching an offense that is this boom or bust. Talent outweighs production.
I think that Rod is onto something. I think it's how Sark calls the game. He goes for the big play. He's not much. Now he can move the ball, and they've shown that they can move the ball down the field. They did that against A&M, Arkansas. They did it against Clemson with a controlled effort. But Stark tries to scheme up some big plays. Calls them a big play, explosive offense. So the negative of that came home to roost on Wednesday. Because what happened is you played a team in Arizona State that just wanted to play keep away. And they ended up with 29 first downs in 38 minutes of possession. So those are the team. And I will say this, that's not good complementary football unless you're scoring a lot of points. So it's okay if you got 34 or 35 points on the scoreboard at the end of regulation. If you only have 24, it's not good enough. And I think that's the weight or the counterbalance that you have to try to figure out.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. We want to thank them along with Duck Camp and Flat Creek Winery. Bobby, what's later today?
Ryan Day talks to the media today at 11. Steve Sarkisian at 12 at the Cotton Bowl. Okay, so that's our first talk with those guys. We also have the second watch with Rod Babers coming. Rod had some really good breakdown on the 4th and 13, and also Texas being clutch and what he thinks it means and where he gets that from right now in the final 5 minutes of that game. Also, we've got the Longhorn live stream this afternoon as well with myself, Jerry Hamilton, and Rod Babers. So we've got a lot going on. There's more tomorrow as well. We got 7 days, guys, until Texas plays to go to the national championship. I'm ready for it. I really, really am. And I think Texas – I wrote today on Texas football, and please join us over there if you get a chance. But I wrote today about this. I think this is the game where Texas is playing with house money. And what I mean by that is Texas was expected to beat Clemson. Texas was expected to beat Arizona State. Now they're playing with house money. From where Texas goes from here, it determines who they really are. That's it. You're either a championship team or playing for the championship, or you're a Final Four team. You've met your probably preseason, I don't want to say your preseason goal, but you've met your preseason expectations by third parties, at least, right? Nobody was picking Texas to win the national championship this year. At least they were not going into the SEC first year, all that stuff. They were saying, oh, maybe they'll get to the semifinals. Maybe they'll be top 10, top 8. Anything from here is gravy for Texas. And treat it that way is what I would say. Go after it with that kind of, I don't want to say loose, but that kind of bravado where you can actually go out there and put everything you got on the line and see where you end up.
Yeah, and I want to say we'll be in Dallas all next week, and I've got my parka and my ascot ready, so it's going to be cold. It's going to be cold.
Your ascot. Good God.
Y'all going to be freezing. I'm going to join y'all, but I'm going to do Thursday morning show from right here. So, and then head that way. All right, y'all. Well, we will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, and then go check us out on ontexasfootball.com. Become an OG. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.